The Black Child Legacy Campaign was created in 2015 by a coalition of community experts around Sacramento County that really wanted to tackle the issue of preventable African American child deaths. And in that steering committee that came together really under kind of the freshman leadership of then Phil Cerner, who was a freshman or sophomore Board of Supervisors, to say, hey, in Sacramento County, Black kids have been dying in preventable ways for over 20 years. Here's the data, here's a Blue Ribbon Commission report, and we know where this is happening. We know this is happening in 7 neighborhoods, and I'll name them really quickly: Meadowview, Valley High, Fruit Ridge, Stockton, Oak Park, Arden Arcade, Del Paso Heights, and North Highlands Foothill Farms. These are where the deaths are happening. And these are the 4 reasons why Black kids are dying in preventable ways. And those reasons are perinatal conditions. So as Black women, we don't have the most healthiest birth outcomes for ourselves, our babies, or our families. SUEDs or SIDS death with sudden unexplained infant deaths, child abuse and neglect, which is death by a parent, caretaker, or guardian, and then there's third-party homicide, which really is related to gang violence, gun violence in our community. And we want to be able to create community-led solutions on the ground, working with community-based organizations to be able to not only think about public health strategies to stop this disproportionate deaths, knowing that Black kids die twice, sometimes 3 times the rate of any other ethnicity in Sacramento County. But we want to be able to lead those efforts here locally and prioritize those health strategies in our neighborhoods. And we have been successful, incredibly successful. The death rates are not, our goal was to have preventable deaths, to reduce those preventable deaths by 10 to 20% in the year 2020. We have surpassed that particular goal by not just 20%, by over 25% of those preventable deaths in those 4 categories have been reduced. We're incredibly proud of the work we've done around third-party homicide, which really is, again, that gang gun violence, which for 24 months in the county and City of Sacramento, there have been no juvenile gun homicides. And that has been not just incredible, but quite remarkable. Not 1, but 2 years of not having a juvenile gun homicide. And it is because of the incredible work of community-based folks that I talked about in those 7 neighborhoods that have what we call community intervention workers, street outreach workers, that are able to be in those neighborhoods and connect with those families and those young people that are connected to youth violence.
I did read the letter that was presented to the City Council yesterday, and you guys do talk about an uptick in violence, even though we're not talking about juvenile violence, as you just mentioned. Can you tell me a little bit more about the uptick in violence that you've noticed?
I think that in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have neighborhoods that were already very vulnerable. And to have that level of instability in our neighborhoods has created a couple of things. 1, it has created families that are in the midst of multiple levels of food insecurity, job insecurity, and really community insecurity. With that comes community violence, and that people are going to act out when they don't have or see a better hope or another pathway. And we see that happening right now. First, there was the fights that were happening in Discovery Park, and unfortunately, little Zion lost his life in a drowning. Then we see that multiple weekends where there are a number of young men deaths that are happening. And so when it comes to gun violence and gang violence, and we want to get in front of that. Not only want to create a ceasefire, stop the shooting, put the guns down, but we want to create, again, that powerful connection and that powerful data around no juvenile homicide homicides. That's really how our community should be. That hasn't been solely because of police engagement. It's been because of community engagement. And that opportunity, given where we're at in the midst of COVID, in the midst of the movement for Black lives, this really is a critical opportunity to lift up those results and lift up the opportunity to take care of these communities that are, like I said, that are vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk about just how many community members do you have on the nonprofit just working, like you mentioned, the outreach team, just how many folks are involved?
In the Black Child Legacy campaign, we again have 7 neighborhoods that have multiple people that are working deeply in those neighborhoods that are considered community intervention workers and crisis responders. And our network is much beyond the Black Child Legacy campaign. We have strong partnerships at the ER and Kaiser. When someone gets shot and you have 200 gangsters that show up to the ER in the midst of COVID, who's going to be the community liaison to be able to talk to those folks that are grieving for their loved one and don't really know what's going on behind the scenes in ER? We are those folks that Kaiser, the trauma center, trust there, as well as UC Davis. We have those relationships and our stakeholderships to be able to provide wraparound services. Again, in the Black Child Legacy campaign, it's not just 20 people or 25 people. We have a movement of folks that have been trained and certified to be able to do this crisis intervention, interruption, and prevention work.
Would you be able to give me an idea, like an approximate of how many folks are part of the organization?
I would say right now, let's say there's 30 folks that are currently doing community intervention work. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the many other partners that are surrounding this work. Yeah.
From the letter, you guys are requesting, is it $2 million from the City of Sacramento? Can we break down, what the $2 million would be used for and just how necessary is this money to be able to continue to do your work?
So again, I want to go back to no juvenile homicides in 24 months. And the work that we're doing is associated with that level of a budget. I would consider that $2 million a small investment when it's compared to the lives of young people. In addition to that, let's break it down. We are asking for $2 million to create street outreach work, crisis intervention work for those most vulnerable neighborhoods when it comes to gang and gun violence. There are 3 things that have to happen in a comprehensive violence reduction prevention strategy. One is intervention. So we believe strongly that violence, you have to get in the middle of that and create those bonds and those leadership opportunities for young people to stay. This is a ceasefire. There's other opportunities to do great things in this community, and gang violence is not the only answer, not the answer at all. The next one is around prevention. Again, it's not just about those young people that are committing those acts of violence, but those other young people that surround that young person. And we want to be able to prevent that from happening, getting in front of it. And then there is interruption. You might have heard this weekend when there's a shooting in Oak Park, and then there happens to be a shooting down the 99 in Meadowview. Those things sometimes are related. And the folks that can get in front of that interruption, of that, those folks that are going fast down that highway to respond to those type of street shootings, there are folks that have to get in the middle of that, and these teams represent those folks. And so when we say that we are asking for a budget that is comprehensive and intervention, prevention, and interruption, it is those 3 areas that we want to be able to strengthen and build our network and build the capacity of folks to be trained. There are folks that have certain opportunities to talk to young people, certain folks that have the opportunities to talk to folks that are shooters. That's not everyone. And we represent the team of community folks that folks can invest in, and we have the results when it comes to those 24 months of no juvenile homicides.
Yeah, that's right. Right now, just with police tensions happening all across the country, some people are looking at this, are you guys looking at it as like a non-police alternative to helping in the communities and to prevention and to everything that we've talked about?
Absolutely. We do see law enforcement as a partner but we believe strongly that we are able to stop violence, gun violence in particular. Community folks are able to do that more than law enforcement folks. Part of that, again, is not just about the incident when it happens. It's about getting in front of that incident before it happens. And that's not police. Police are showed up when something has already occurred or in the process of occurring. We have the opportunity to stop the violence, call that to communities, and to really have that trusted and credible messaging to talk to those individuals that would be involved in that violence. And we want to be able to do that. And that is going to takes a different approach when it comes to community policing and the investment in community.
Recently, we've talked to Police Chief Daniel Hahn as well as Mayor Steinberg about, what their plans are here in Sacramento. Does the mayor, is an option to defund the police, I would say defunding is kind of like the incorrect word that's being used, because what he mentioned is allocating some of the money, some of the funds that would normally go to the police department for other community aspects. Like in this case, would that be kind of something that you guys are hoping for, to work alongside police, or to be, again, just that non-police alternative working alongside with the police?
Absolutely. At this time, I do believe strongly in the results that we've had. I can honestly say that those results come from a clear investment from both the city and the county to be able to support that work of community intervention. Again, folks that have credible messaging and can get inside of those prevention, intervention, and strategies for those neighborhoods. What I would say is that the mayor and city council, as well as the county and the board of supervisors, have the opportunity with these CARES dollars to think radically about how to bring in community into creating that safety. That is not just police. And it never has and it never can be. It also takes really committed community folks that have, again, that credible message, the opportunity that has that lived experience in those neighborhoods to begin to talk to your neighbors, your residents, your friends, your family, to say, hey, not only are we in this pandemic, but we are trying to save the lives of young people. And we're not going to stand for that in our neighborhoods. And that comes from folks like you and me that can walk in neighborhoods that we come from.
So you talked about CARES funding. What about police funding? Do you think it would also be appropriate to maybe allocate some of the police funding towards like an organization like yours?
I think that the city has a lot to make up. A lot to make up when it comes to what has happened in Measure U and what we see the disinvestment or the disinvestment of Measure G and the lift up of what could really happen when those resources are allocated to youth programming. The city, the mayor, they have a lot to be able to make up and justify why those levels of commitments have not been made so far when it comes to the city of Sacramento, given the results we know that we've had from community justice. And so if in fact that's the case, right, if just logically 2 years of no homicides, the police have been here way before those 2 years. All we're saying is invest in when we know what's working right now, and that happens to be the people of these neighborhoods. Again, we shouldn't be having to hold up a white flag to say, please, please, please invest in this, because we already know, the city knows, the police department knows, the county knows, those elected officials know at this point that what has been working to keep safety has been the folks that have that, again, the community intervention workers day in and day out, working alongside to respond to crisis, violent crises in the midst of a pandemic, prior to the pandemic, and we'll still be standing here after that.
Talking to Mayor Steinberg and as well as with Police Chief Hahn, they talked about having that, just the unfairness of sending out an officer to every single 911 call. Some of those calls are mental health calls. Mm-hmm. And instead of sending a police officer, a person with a gun, why don't we send out a trained, mental health professional? That could be, the first one to the scene versus sending out, an officer with a gun. Obviously, in those, volatile situations, things can escalate quickly, especially if you're seeing an officer with a gun versus maybe just sending somebody who's trained for that. do you think that, you know, this would be kind of, you know, some part of that? I mean, we talked about, you know, intervention. You've got folks who are the first ones, sounds like they're the first ones in the line of scrimmage when it comes down to whatever's happening in the community. You know, would you guys, it sounds like there's a connect there that could be done working alongside the police department.
Yes, absolutely. Again, what we are saying is that it has taken community to change the community. It is not the police that changed the community. And if that is true, what we know to be true, then we have to invest in community. And that is what we are saying here. I do believe that, again, the police come from a very reactionary piece, right? You've called them because there is some crisis at that moment. But wouldn't it be a wonderful world if we could call on those folks that we know are not just there to show up in a 911 moment, but to show up with both the love and the type of credibility and professionalism that it's going to take to de-escalate a situation that does not call for a gun, does not call for a taser, but calls for that opportunity to really engage with community, engage with individuals at another level. And that is not policing. And so we've got to be able to, as a community, to right some of those wrongs and create those lanes, those professional lanes for folks to exist in neighborhoods that can really help in the crisis. Community intervention workers are frontline workers. That is the simple truth of it. Again, we show up to that yellow tape when there's someone that is on the ground. We show up to those mothers' homes that have lost their son or daughter to gun violence. We show up to those hospitals and those ER moments when it is mayhem. And we show up in the middle of the night when everyone is sleeping to make sure that there's not another shooting across town. And so because of those reasons, we're asking for the city and county to invest in what we know is already working in Sacramento, and that's community intervention workers and the work of the Black Child Legacy Campaign.
And these are mostly volunteers, I would imagine.
There are a lot of volunteers, I would say, and there are a lot of folks that should be paid a lot more for the work that they're doing.
And I have to ask you this.
That's part of our conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to ask you this, you know, just with everything happening right now, what do you guys think about, you know, disbanding or dismantling the police department?
I believe that it is not our job to figure out how to fix the police department. That's not our job. Our job is to figure out how to fix our communities. And we have been doing that. What our goal is to work with those folks that want to use nonviolence as a way to bring people together. And if that is the police department, so be it. That hasn't necessarily been my experience with the police department, but I welcome those levels of conversations and that level of commitment from them. I do believe that budgets are a moral compass on how and what our community believes in to be a priority. And in the county budget and in the city budget, law enforcement is a very huge part of that. And what we know is that to be working is that law enforcement by itself does not make a neighborhood safe. It really is the community.
So what happens next? Yesterday, you guys presented this letter to the city council. What was their take? What do they say? Are they going to consider the $2 million? What happens next?
Yes, so what we're hoping is, because our community did take a large stand, and I want to thank those elected officials on the dais last night that continue to work with those young people, the youth commission there, to say, hey, youth violence prevention is a priority in these CARES funding. Youth violence prevention is a priority for the city of Sacramento, and we've got to figure this out. And so I commend the elected officials, Mayor Pro Tem Ashby, Rick Jennings, Larry Carr, Hanson. I mean, Allen, they really did bring up violence prevention as a key strategy to be able to connect to the youth programming part that the mayor is proposing. And that is a welcome conversation. No one has made the commitment for the $2 million, but they have made a commitment to review our budget, to make sure that the work that we are doing is really aligned aligned with the legality of the CARES Act funding, and we welcome it. There's nothing more important than saving the lives of the youngest among us. And so if that is what they've got to do to make a decision, if that is what CARES Act dollars can be used for, we welcome that conversation and welcome the opportunity to talk about data and gun violence in our neighborhoods and results.
It sounds like at this point, it's more of just waiting for the city council.
Yeah, you know, they voted 0 to 9 last night that they want to see a proposal from the Black Child Legacy Campaign, and that includes that $2 million ask right now. So again, that was a 0 to 9 vote. All of the youth commissioners too, I thank you, youth commissioners, because this is important. And again, our elected officials can see that we've been working hard and that this work is going to save the lives of our young people. And it's also going to create jobs for folks that have that lived experience to be able to join our movement. And that's even more incredible.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Kendra. Thank you for taking the time and talking to me. I did get some video because, you know, obviously I'm only given 90 minutes to tell this story. So part of that is obviously showing video. And I know right now it's kind of tough, you know, with the whole COVID situation. That's why I asked earlier. So I did get some video. So thank you so much for that. Do you guys have any other video? Because a lot of the video I saw was kind of like a one-on-one with some of those, the intervention team. But is there any other video where it shows, you know, just being out in the community? I don't know if you guys have any of that footage.
Yeah, let me, have you looked at all of our videos online right now? There's a lot of great stuff, but let me see if I can find specific we have a gun violence rally that we did last year. We're going to be doing a huge community investment march next Thursday. So we've got a lot of things in the queue and we've done things. But like I said, it's hard right now just because of COVID.
Right.
And I'm trying to keep everyone safe.
Also, did want to ask, where can folks go if they want to volunteer, if they want to help you guys out? Where can they go to do that?
Please go to our website. It's called blackchildlegacy.org. Please sign up for our resource distribution list. You can also send us emails and connect the dots. I always ask folks, please chime in. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all those other social media networks. And we're constantly putting out resources for families that are really in these vulnerable neighborhoods. So please check us out.